Okay, so like everything else that we've done in Revit, before we actually get inside Revit or get working with Revit, we have to understand some of the construction aspects of the objects. So we're going to get started on roofs. At this point, let's see, where did I start here? At this point, we're pretty much experts, right? At that wall. So at the top of the wall, we have the double top plate. The bottom of the wall, we have the bottom plate. And then we have the drywall on the inside. We have the plywood. And then our stucco. Right, this is the plywood right there. And here's the stucco. I'm sorry, here's the drywall. So, and again, just like everything else, there's different ways of creating the same or constructing the same thing. So there's different types of ways to create a roof. The two most common methods of creating a roof is a rafter system or rafter construction and a truss. Okay. We're going to be focusing on the rafter. It's the one that's most common today when doing wood construction, specifically in residential. Trusses are still used. Trusses are, you've probably seen them. They're kind of the beams like that, and they have this thing, right? That's known as a truss system. That is not what we're working on today. We're going to be working on the rafters. So a rafter works a bit differently. A rafter, and let me use the thicker line here. Oops. A rafter comes in and it's notched. It's a piece of wood that comes up like that. Okay. So this here is known as a rafter. Okay. What we need to know is what's the slope of this roof. Now, roof slopes are typically done in a ratio of 12. So actually, let's go down here. So roof slopes is a ratio of 12. So in other words, something like a 312 or a 412. Okay. If you go into construction or talk to a contractor and say, hey, I want to do a 312 roof, that's what we would say. So what does this actually mean? A 312 roof means that for any 12 units, okay, now units could be for every 12 inches, for every 12 feet, for every 12, I mean, it's usually just feet and inches, right? I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So for any 12 units, I'm going to go up 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So a 312 would mean that I would start here, go 12 units, and then up 3. And that's going to give me the angle for the slope. If I say a 412, that's going to put me there, right? So notice that as I go bigger, let's say I go with a 612, that's right there. So the bigger the number, the steeper the slope, right? That's the 312. Now, in California, the two most common angles or slopes is a 312 and a 412. almost every house when you're driving down the road is either going to have a 312 slope or a 412 slope, unless it's a flat roof. And flat roofs are not done in a ratio of 12. They are done by a percentage. Okay. Now, the first thing to understand is that flat roofs are actually not flat. And the reason for that is because when it rains, you still need water to be able to drain off. If the flat was in fact actually, I'm sorry, if the roof was in fact actually flat, then when it rained, the water is just going to stay on top of the roof, and then that creates weight, that creates water kind of trying to get into the house, puddles. Water really destroys materials over time. So you want to try to get the water off of your roof kind of as quickly as possible, which is why these slopes, these 312, 412 slopes, are really good. So when we're talking about flat roofs, we still need an angle, but it's not going to be in a ratio of 12, it'll be in a percentage. Now okay, the minimum percentage is a 2% slope. What that means is that for every 100 units, you're going to go up 2. So it's still small, okay? It's a small incline, but over the span of um, several feet, you will notice that does actually have a slope, okay? Now, really quickly, a 2% slope is about 1/8 of an inch per foot, right? Um, so anyway, so flat roofs is a 2% slope. So the question then, coming back over here, is, well, I understand the 312, 412, and then the 2% slope, but where is my 0 point? Where is the slope taken from? And the slope is going to be taken from this point right there. I should do that in a different color. So right there. So that means from this point, I'm going to go 12 units, and then I'll go up, say 3 units. And that's going to give me a 312 slope. Or if we wanted to do the slope 2% for a flat roof, we would still start there. We'd go 100 units and then up 2. Okay. Um, so that's kind of what we look at when we're creating the roofs. Okay. The only other thing is we are going to have to go into Revit to adjust the construction type. Okay. And what we're going to be using is, and this one is kind of important, but we'll talk about it when we get inside Revit. Not a plumb cut. Okay. And that is referring to how the rafter is cut. Okay. Do we want it cut like this? Okay. Or do we want it cut fully like that? And we're going to want it to be cut fully like that. Okay. I take it back. There is one other thing that we want to talk about, and that is an overhang. So a roof overhang is the distance. Let's go smaller here. That a roof will hang past the wall. So let's say it's 2 feet. This is known as the overhang. Okay. The reason why we overhang is so that when it rains, when it rains, we want the water falling away from the wall. Okay? because if you have water hitting the rain, I'm sorry, if you have water hitting the wall, then it leads, you open yourself up to an opportunity where the water can actually begin to trickle inside the wall, and then you have water damage and leaks and things like that. So you typically want to try to get the water away from the wall as much or as far as possible. Now, overhangs are not a requirement. They are not a building code. We can, in fact, if we wanted to, have it really flush and not have an overhang at all so that the stucco just kind of goes all the way up and then it meets up like that. There's always kind of construction issues and details and things like that um, around it, but we can do that if we wanted to. But the point is that a roof overhang is not a requirement. It's not a building code. It's just really good to have for the construction of the roof. Okay, so that's it. That's all I'm going to cover for the roofs. We're now going to have to jump into